Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. My topic today is the democratization of security. Very pleased to welcome to the virtual studio Sebastian Jakubowski. Is the manager, Network Security with Netrix, and he's joined by Rich Lilly, Partner and Director of Security with Netrix. Rich, Sebastian, thanks so much for taking time to speak with me today.
Pleasure, likewise.
Good morning.
Let's start here. Sebastian, cybersecurity threats are very democratic. Protection is not. Where do you see the disconnect most pronounced?
I think knowledge. These days, I think it's all about knowledge and education, right? At least from my perspective, from our network security, right? Security has to be holistic, right? It has to address all parts of the network systems users, right? It cannot be just one piece. I think that's the biggest disconnect, right? A lot of companies are concentrating on only on specific areas, missing, other portions out. I think that's the biggest disconnect. So I think, a primary key to a holistic approach is making sure that all areas of the network system, sites, internet edge, all that has to be secured as well.
So as we start this new year, what do you gentlemen see as the threats, the challenges that are facing all enterprises today, regardless of size, regardless of sector?
I think one of the biggest things is, the threats have gone top down, right? So in the past, being a Fortune 500 company, you're expected to be a target. These days, you've got some of the smallest companies that are facing the same challenges. And that's one of the real challenges, is that these small organizations typically haven't had, and certainly don't have, as high of a security budget as a lot of the F500s or the F100s. So the challenge is, how do I protect my organization that may contain, transact, and work in just the sensitive data, but without that budget? And a lot of what we're looking at now is how to take some of those tools that have really only been readily accessible by those enterprise customers down through, that customer. It may be, a 50-seat firm that's supporting a specific government contract or supporting a different industry, et cetera. Really the downside these days is that everyone is an equal target. It's not just about kind of going after the big fish anymore.
I think Rich got it right. These days is all about just securing everyone, right? Like you said, security has to be, security doesn't only apply to the enterprise customer, right? Everyone, like he said, everyone is an equal target, right? Doesn't matter of the size, doesn't matter if you're a small company, medium, large enterprise. Security applies to everyone.
If we've learned anything over the past year, every one of us is part of somebody's supply chain, and we're vulnerable because of it. So what would you say are the biggest barriers that stand between these organizations and improving security?
I'll start with that. I think, cost and budget is something I've talked about prior. That is a huge challenge. Organizations that haven't had a line item for security before, and now introducing with that new cost and justifying that risk, is something that's difficult, especially if you're a privately held organization. It's not the easiest thing to go back and justify. This potential fear is not the act in itself. So we find a lot of organizations saying after that event, that security event, if there is one, when there will be one, taking that action, identifying that budget, but without trying to fearmonger, how do you get to that point where you are putting some of this in place so that event doesn't happen? That is one of the biggest challenges, as well as, really the lack of security personnel today. We may think the market has a lot of folks in it, but, because of the high need of security individuals, the market's actually pretty tight right now, and finding someone that's very experienced, has the right skill set, is not already picked up by one of the big tech companies already, is not the easiest thing to do. So we're representing also a challenge of lack of a market on just finding those people right now as well. And though both those things together alone generate a pretty tough spot for a lot of these organizations to be in.
Yeah, and I would agree with Rage, right? I had multiple conversations last few weeks with a few of our customers, and they're in the same boat, right? They do have a budget, right? So it's a good thing. They do have a budget, but unfortunately don't have the staff to support it, right? So, and for them, providing the right solution and supporting that solution, right? The security environment is tough. And finding the talent and staff this time, right? It's very difficult. So I think that's something that a lot of customers are dealing with and will be dealing with for the next who knows, right? Few years maybe until market settles down.
Talk to me about the outsourcing option. What are the varying merits of that?
Yeah, so from our perspective, right, this is where we come in from a network perspective, right? We do support our customers, right? So we work with customers that just don't have the staff, right, or they don't have the power to do it, right? So a lot of customers are actually looking for outside help, right, and also for companies that are well in the market, that understand the security, right, that have the experience and have the staff to support them. So this is something that we see. I think the market for outsourcing is growing, and I think it's going to continue to grow. So yeah, from an outsourcing standpoint, I think we're just going to see more and more companies going towards a third party to assist them with security needs.
Yeah, and I'll add on top of that. I think, a lot of the questions these organizations come across is, do they build or buy, right? And I'm talking about the people, because it's not just about buying the tooling. It's actually the process, the maturity. A lot of those things take time. The average cost to build a security operations center for most orgs today is over $1 million. This is across the people, the tooling, the process, the time to development. A lot of areas, that we help fill some of those is we're already bringing the people in the process, and most of the time the technology. So, that turnaround time when we talk about some of the events of, late December with Log4j, and we talk about before that SolarWinds, or we talk about, any of the others that have come up in the last 6 to 12 months, a lot of these things cause, the cause and effect is that they have the effect of now having, to want to move in on deploying these security tools, but then you have all those other problems we talked about prior. So a lot of the good areas where, organizations like Netrix come in is filling those gaps and doing it really in a very quick manner versus having to take, months or maybe even a year to spin some of those pieces up.
I'm glad you brought up the SOC, Rich. Talk about the value of a provider that comes with a modern SOC as well as end-to-end security services.
Yeah, I mean, one of the key areas, Sebastian touched on this a little bit earlier too. When we talk about the modern SOC, and I love to use that term, is the modern SOC is really one that gets any and all security telemetry in from various different sources. In the past, we really thought of the SOC as being extremely siloed in 1, 2, 3, or 4 different areas. Bringing that all together, you'll see the term used out there in the market today, XDR, which is your extended detection and response, which really represents that I've got all these different pieces of signal coming in and collaborating with each other to find threats versus really spending a lot of time on analysts, kind of working in their own pods. And what we offer today from a modern SOC is the ability to take in all of that. We build in a lot of that automated correlation so that our time to response, our time to triage is much lower than most because it's a lot less human time spent as a part of these events. And this is something that we've been working on for years and years now. So again, we're not having to go back and build this library of knowledge or intel up around these things. We've got a lot of these pieces that are lessons learned from other customers, and we're bringing that to the table right away for customers. So most customers will walk through kind of the maturity level of the traditional SOC, a pseudo modern SOC, and a modern SOC. The good thing is, if we're being introduced to customers as their provider, we're already at that top level, so we're not having to kind of build that process to get to that point.
Yeah, I would agree. It's all about process and also experience, right? With a lot of companies, organizations starting from scratch, right? It's difficult to approach security when you basically don't know the market from a security aspect, and also don't have the process and experience to do it, right? With us, with Netrix, because we have the staff, because we have the experience, because we have the process, we can go in and assist customers day one versus trying to figure out what needs to be done, when, and how.
Talk a little bit more about Netrix. What distinguishes you in particular in this growing marketplace?
I come from a consulting background, right? So I've worked for a lot of different companies in the Chicago market. So every time I talk to my customers, right, when I compare, Netrix to, my previous, companies that I work for, right? From my perspective, right, we concentrate on a complete solution versus a product, right? That's the biggest differential, right? We don't sell a specific product just to sell it, right? We want to understand what the actual needs are, build a proper solution around it, And that's what we go in when it comes to recommendations. So that's the biggest difference between us, Netrix, and a lot of other companies out there.
Yeah, and I'll add on top of that as well. I think that one of the big areas we focused in on is kind of the development of this Netrix Intelligence Library, which is taking these lessons learned from other customers that are facing threats and experience, or what Sebastian's team is working in with different SASE solutions, et cetera. Bring that all together into the knowledge that's going to help add value versus really work on the fly. And we always talk about this in terms of proactive versus reactive. We want to get much away from the reactive side, because the hope is that we can identify these things before our clients come in with an issue, and that gives us kind of a very quick response time, or even a proactive response time when it comes to some of these items. And a lot of that's through things we've developed over the course of many years here.
Like as you mentioned, your customers. Talk to me. What feedback do you get from your customers about the services and the expertise you provide?
Yeah, definitely that we provide best of breed. For us, we have spent a considerable amount of time, as I've talked about, and putting different pieces together. And it's a lot. When we get asked about comparison of us to other vendors, it's we're providing a lot of the automation that they're expecting. We don't want to burn time on phone calls with customers for tier 1 or 2 incidents. They will happen and they will come up. But these things that can be automated, and if we're doing it more than 2, 3, 4 times, we want to make sure that that's automated in some way, because then we can really focus in on the potentially true events. So a lot of that really has, through security DevOps as well as automation, has allowed us to kind of refocus a lot of our time and effort past just the remedial phone call taking and ticket taking to help with incident response and triage.
Sebastian, anything you care to add in closing?
The only thing I can add is our ability to gain access to different type of resources, right? Because we, have the talent and have the experience, right? We have direct access to not only security expertise, but also system side, network security side, and so on. That's what makes us stronger, right? Because it is critical to understand security as one holistic thing, right? Versus just having that, I only concentrate on this specific area, right? So having understanding of the entire ecosystem makes things stronger when it comes to us being able to deliver, right, proper solutions to our customers.
Very good, Sebastian. Rich, thanks so much for taking time to speak with me today. Very grateful.
Likewise, thanks for the time.
Oh, anytime. Thank you.
Again, the topic has been the democratization of security. You've just heard from Sebastian Jakubowski and Rich Lilly, both with Netrix. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you so much for giving us your time and attention today.